Alyssa, I feel like you're going to be able to relate to this analogy that I'm about to start the news segment on.
Okay.
So have you ever had like an old car? You get a car, and when you first start driving it, it's like, it's not perfect, but it does the job. You know, it gets you from point A to point B. And you just keep driving it and, you know, for longer than you should. And even with routine maintenance, things are kind of going south. It's becoming more and more feeble. Pieces are falling out. And by the time you finally give up on it, it's basically like a Fred Flintstone's car. Like you barely can get from place to place. But you still like need the car, you know, even though it is really, really, you know, janky and only starts half the time, especially if it's too cold. You still need your car. It still is. I feel like that was what Roe v. Wade was to American women.
Shit.
It was like this car we got in 1973 and it worked fine. But over the years, just kind of pieces fell off. But we were like, look, this is still our car. This is our only car.
That is vivid and accurate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this Sunday, January 22nd, would have been the 50th anniversary of our junky car, Roe v. Wade. But it was obviously struck down last year. And they still had the March for Life, though, which I found to be a little bit scary.
Well, because Erin, they made it celebratory this year. They didn't have to bring all the overhyped, crazy graphic photos because they're like, look at us. We won. And I appreciate that they really honed in on the symbolism and they didn't end it at the Supreme Court this year because they don't need SCOTUS anymore. They ended it at the Capitol.
Yeah. So let's get into that because I think we can look back on 50 years of Roe, but I feel like my car analogy basically did the trick. It was fine.
It did.
It got worse and worse and worse.
Terrific summary.
Thank you so much. And I also was like, I bet Alyssa's driven a car that's physically fallen apart as she's been driving.
As I was driving my oldest car to the dealer to get a new car, it caught fire. So believe me, I've been there. And let me tell you, thank God back in 2012, that red Ford Escape was on sale at the dealer because I would have been screwed otherwise.
Wow. It's a very good analogy for the rights of women and anybody with a uterus in the U.S. Great. So here's the thing. Like, we can look back. I think there have been a lot of good retrospectives about like what Roe meant. But I think right now it helps to kind of bring it into focus what it means right now. Roe no longer exists, and here's what that means. Despite the fact that a new NPR Ipsos poll found that 3 in 5 Americans believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases, and despite the fact that since Roe v. Wade was overturned, not a single pro-choice referendum has lost in the polls, and that is true. State by state, local, whatever. Voters love pro-choice referendums. Despite that, anti-choice forces in the U.S. are really pushing for some wacky bananas legislation. Bills that would restrict travel. If you're a person that lives in a red state, bills that would make it more difficult for you to travel out of state to get abortion care. They want state level government to be able to interfere with the federal mail system. They want to be able to prevent abortion pills to be delivered to people via the federal mail system. In Arkansas, a bill is being introduced that would prosecute abortion seekers for felony murder. There's a proposed ban on abortion starting at fertilization in Wyoming, which is funny because you're not even pregnant. That's not how pregnancy works. You're not.
But Erin, we know that they have no idea how pregnancy works.
No, none of these people could find the clitoris with a flashlight and a map, or any part of the reproductive anatomy on the female body. They also in Montana, representatives have introduced amendments to the state constitution that would exclude abortion from the constitutional right to privacy. So that is pretty bleak. What else is going on with the anti-abortion movement?
Oh, Erin, these people have gotten second life. Let's see. What do they want to do? Well, they want to, I don't know. And the thing that's so interesting kind of about the things that they want to do, unclear how any of it would happen, but they are getting creative. They want to tax companies that support employees who need to seek abortion. How you levy such tax, unclear, but they're all over it. They want, this one is the one I thought was the most disgusting, I guess, appalling, is that they want to mandate emergency health care for aborted fetuses.
What the fuck?
If you say you are pregnant and you find out that there is something wrong with the fetus, it will not survive outside of the womb. It has abnormalities that are life-threatening. They want, if you have this abortion, for doctors to be on hand to try to save the life of this fetus. However, Erin, these are the same people who, when a woman is miscarrying, they're like, no drugs for you, no help for you, sit there, go through it yourself. Don't know if you're going to get septic. You might, but, okay. So it is.
That's horrible. And why are these community college poli-sci majors making rules about the way medicine should be practiced? Like,
it is. But another thing that I read that is it was interesting because it seemed bad, but then the general counsel for the Center of Reproductive Rights, Jenny Ma, sort of put it best. Activists, anti-abortion activists, have filed a lawsuit to reverse the FDA's decades-long approval of mifepristone. The case is being heard by a Trumpy judge with a very dangerous track record in an attempt to nationally ban medication abortions. Jenny Ma says this is actually far more dangerous than the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
Well, because medication abortions are the most common form of abortion. Because when you have an abortion, it doesn't look like the anti-abortion billboard. It is, in almost all cases, it is before 12 weeks, and it is not anything that anybody would recognize as resembling a human baby. It's
exactly. And because it is they're going after the FDA, it would prove to be it would have nationwide impact.
Right. And medication abortion is something that you can use if it is early in the pregnancy and you would prefer to have an abortion in the privacy of your home. I've used it before. It's basically like it's 2 doses of medication, and the second one causes like a super period. And and that's something that can be managed at home versus a surgical one, which requires people to go into the office. This is also really helpful. Medication abortion is helpful for people who live far away from facilities that provide surgical abortion care. So if you live in a rural area, if you live in a place where you don't feel safe physically going to the clinic because some creepy old men have posted up outside holding crucifixes. God, nothing creepier than a pro-life old man.
100%.
Nothing creepier. Making medication abortion illegal and overturning the FDA's approval of it would have reach into every single state, up every single skirt. It is, it's really, really ridiculous. But the thing is, like, one thing I found to be interesting about judges in an era of like just complete conservative judicial impunity is it doesn't really matter if the reasons that they do things make sense. It doesn't really matter because who's going to do anything about, I mean, like the Supreme Court doesn't need to make any sense anymore because there's nobody that it can actually, they don't have to make sense. They get it's a because I said so entity. And so it doesn't really, I guess we can just kind of say like what they're doing, what the Supreme Court does or doesn't do makes sense or doesn't make sense until we're blue in the face. And they don't care because why would they? Why would they?
Right.
I also, let's talk about, so the March for Life, which we talked about at the beginning of the segment, is something that's been going on for a really long time. I had to go there and cover it once. It's very, very weird, full of a lot of creepy people. But it also is something that's attended by a lot of really high-profile Republicans. Republican House Majority Leader Steve Scalise was there. He pledged support for anti-abortion proposals in Congress, including a bill that would force doctors to practice life support. That's Steve Scalise.
Yep. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about. Fortunately, though, there are blue states that are stepping up. I don't, this Congress, for as wacky of proposals they are going to introduce now that they have the House, none of it is going to actually get done. This is them just writing fanfic to appease their donors. But, if they were to win the Senate and the White House, they would actually do this crazy, wacky stuff. Yeah. Blue states, in the meantime, are stepping up. States across the Northeast and the West Coast, plus Illinois and Minnesota, yay, Midwest, are expected to introduce more proactive abortion legislation. The Women's March held nationwide rallies on the 50th anniversary of Roe. And Vice President Kamala Harris spoke at an event hosted by Planned Parenthood in Florida. Ooh, bold choice, Kamala. Harris denounced extremist Republicans and so-called leaders in Florida for restricting abortion and for rules that force healthcare providers to risk going to jail just for doing their job. Alyssa, where do you think this all is going? We know that abortion is very popular. Government overreach into the way businesses conduct themselves, the way people choose their healthcare, and family formation issues, deeply unpopular. But they don't seem to care. So where do you think this is all going?
They don't care. Well, they all have second life now. By overturning Roe, they are raising tons of money because people think they have a chance. So they're not going to stop. They're going to be as outrageous as they can, because even if they get approval or they get enacted 50% of what they're calling for, it's a win. If they get 10%, it's a win. Overturning Roe was a win for them. And so I don't think that they are going to stop, because nothing is really sort of locking in. In Kansas, the state overwhelmingly protected abortion back in August. And the state legislature, members of the state legislature, are still coming back. It's your state spoke, stop, but they don't care. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that we are in for so much more of just being terrified about, because everything now that we've seen what the Supreme Court will do, all these crazy things can't be discounted as impossible, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is possible. And so reproductive rights activists are literally battling a million wars on all fronts right now.
Mm-hmm. I also read something recently about some conservatives trying to advocate for the Comstock Act to be enforced. The Comstock Act was a law from the 1890s that restricts sending smutty pictures. Right. It's the most terrified prude in the world making laws about, no, you can't send things in the mail that are going to cause people to be horny or facilitate sex or anything like that.
Right. It's anything they deem immoral or indecent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so here's something. We've talked about this before. I think that we've seen a good number of, straight men, or men in general, gay, straight, whatever, men stand up and speak out in favor of reproductive justice. I would like to see more of it, because I don't think that there are a lot of, just average guys living in average suburbs in America that really think this affects them. I wonder if there's a way for us to bring up the fact that if the Comstock Act is enforced, I think there goes your internet porn, guys. There it goes.
Don't you feel like that would be the perfect Super Bowl ad?
I mean, it really would get men between 18 and 30 to show up and vote. As long as, make it have something to do specifically with their access to pornography. And I think, maybe we'll make some progress. I think in the meantime, I welcome, if this translates to conservatives stepping on a field of rakes over and over and over again and just losing elections over and over and over again, bring it on. But I don't want to encourage or be excited about extremism, because it's really impossible to predict when it's actually going to take. And so all of it makes me nervous, because some of the most extreme things I've seen in my lifetime that I never, ever thought would be mainstream are now mainstream.
Right.
And so, on that note, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we have our interview for the week with Representative Grace Meng. And welcome back. Our guest today has represented New York's 6th congressional district since 2013. She's the first and only Asian American congressperson from the state of New York, and she's the vice chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. Last year, Biden signed a bill of hers that seeks to establish the first national museum dedicated to the history of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Representative Grace Meng, welcome to Hysteria.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
We're glad you're here. We're looking forward to talking to you today. Wish it were under better circumstances. Where were you when you learned about the mass shooting in Monterey Park? Your congressional colleague, Judy Chu, who represents Monterey Park, is also chairwoman of the Congressional Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus. Have you guys spoken? How is she doing? How are your fellow Congress or caucus members doing? And how did your community in Queens react?
Yeah, thank you so much, Erin, for asking. I actually happened to wake up in the middle of the night. I think it was around 4 a.m. I happened to check my Twitter feed and saw what was going on in Monterey Park. There wasn't a lot of information yet. I did text my colleague, Judy Chu, to check in on her, but understandably, she was super busy dealing with everything, trying to get more information. And remember, this was before they caught the suspect. And so the next morning, a few hours later, I had an event at a local Taiwanese American senior center, a group of people who actually have a lot of friends in Monterey Park. My own uncle lives 5 minutes away from the studio. And so I went to the center, and the mood was somber. It was supposed to be a Lunar New Year celebration. It was the first day of the Year of the Rabbit. And so, we talked and comforted each other. But I really thought it was important for me to be there. I finally saw Judy today, Judy Chu, and she looks really worn out. And I think that the emotion and the heavy toll of comforting her constituents and really speaking out on behalf of the community across the country is weighing very heavily on her.
Grace, Asian Americans have been the target of violence in recent years. Unlike in these two tragedies over the weekend, the perpetrators are often from outside the community and target victims because they are Asian. In 2021, you helped pass a bill that dedicated government resources to reviewing and fighting hate crimes during the pandemic. What can the government do to continue fighting these hate crimes?
Yeah, so a few years ago, soon after the tragedies in Georgia happened, where people died from shootings at local Atlanta spas, we are so grateful to the Biden-Harris administration, who were amongst the first to reach out in the days after that tragedy, and just months later was able to help us pass that piece of legislation. What we heard from a lot of our allies, groups who have suffered discrimination and who have continuously fought against bias, our friends in the Black community, Jewish community, Muslim, LGBT. One common thread was that there was not enough information and data collected about what was going on in terms of hate crimes and bias incidents. And it becomes really hard to mend what you can't measure. Many jurisdictions around the country reported 0 hate crimes in any given year. And we know that's not the case as much as we'd like to believe it. So that's the impetus behind that law, was to provide a clearer picture so that we can better address it. But actually today in our caucus, Vice President Kamala Harris came and Representative Chu spoke up about what happened over the last few days, including in Monterey Park, and spoke about the importance of passing gun safety legislation. The shooter in the Monterey Park tragedy had a weapon that had no business belonging in his hands or in anywhere near our neighborhoods and communities. And so that is something that we definitely have to keep pushing forward.
Grace, for those who might not be familiar, can you tell our listeners about Lunar New Year? Like, what does it signify to the community? How long does it last? How do you celebrate? And so on.
Well, these tragedies would have been horrific on any day of the year. But given that it happened literally on the eve of the first day of the year, that is when we celebrate. That is when we gather with family and we prepare foods. We prepare red envelopes of money to give to the children. And what happens on that day, it's sort of a superstition. What happens, we say, sets the tone for the rest of the year. And so this is something that will unfortunately kind of be on the minds of people as they celebrate Lunar New Year every year going forward, especially those in Monterey Park and in California. But it's supposed to be a very happy and joyous day.
Asian American Pacific Islanders are the fastest growing racial and ethnic group in America. And this month, you reintroduced legislation to make Lunar New Year a federal holiday. It's already an official state holiday in California. What do you hope to achieve and communicate with the holiday if the bill passes?
Sure. Well, we're thrilled to hear about what happened in California. Many years ago, we successfully fought for Lunar New Year to be a school holiday for our public school kids in New York City, which is great fun for the kids. It's not only about a day off, but a chance, like with all holidays, for the whole community and the whole city to learn about the culture and the contributions of the Asian American community. We're looking forward to push this on the federal level as well. And we are the fastest growing community, and it would just be wonderful to be able to celebrate this in a real way around the country.
So this week has already been full of a lot of grief. So let's end on a hopeful note. 2023 is the year of the rabbit in the Chinese zodiac and the year of the cat in the Vietnamese zodiac. What does the year of the rabbit bring? And how can our listeners support members of their local AAPI communities during this holiday?
Sure. Well, I'm a little biased because I am also a rabbit. Don't calculate my age. I am a rabbit, and it often stands for loyalty and steadfastness and peace. And that is really what I hope for our communities across the country, Asian and beyond. Our country has gone through some really tough times in the last few years. And so I really do wish for more peace and joy this coming year.
Representative Meng, I am so excited that you were here today to talk to us about this. You were the perfect person to talk to about this. And I also wanted to let you know we're taking our 1-year-old to her first Golden Dragon Parade this coming Saturday. So we're so excited. Here in Chinatown in LA, we're going to go to the Golden Dragon Parade.
That's
we
awesome.
Cannot wait.
Festivities go on for weeks on end. So lots to do.
Yeah. And it's awesome. I'm so excited that more people are going to get to experience Lunar New Year if it becomes a federal holiday. Representative Meng, thank you so much for joining us. Take care of yourself, take care of your fellow caucus members, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much.